You're listening to the Pagoda Boys, recorded at the No Limit Cafe, downtown Pagoda, Tennessee. We hope you enjoy this episode.
The Pagoda Boys are sponsored by Craig Barron Surveying, West Tennessee Crappie Fishing Guide Service, Chase Petty Outdoors, Pine Bluff Materials, Universal Contractors, Nutrient Ag in Wimberg, Pete Kaiser Accounting Services, Mud Lake Planning Company, DeKalb, Asgrow, and Delta Pine, Outer Limit Power Sports, Dr. K, Tin Cans, Hurt Seed and Halls, Caro Farmers Gin, Shof Cotton, Waterfowl Outfitters of West Tennessee, Tyson Foods in New Bern, Cypress Creek Outdoors, Duck River Bird Taxidermy, Farm Credit Mid-America, Ford Construction, Hillier Farms in Nauvoo, Window Alexander Realty, and our very own Childress Farms.
Hello, listening world. My name's Tony Childress. I am a Pagoda boy, and I'm here with three other Pagoda boys and a special guest who I will introduce here in just a moment. But before we get into the special guest, I want to tell you that we're recording here in downtown Pagoda, Tennessee at the No Limit Cafe. Pagoda, Tennessee is the duck hunting capital of the galaxy because we say it is. I'm here with my brother, Wally Childress. How things going, Wally?
Man, unbelievably good. It's my turn to talk.
Yeah, but people have already heard enough from you. Bubba, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
You want to cede your time to Wally?
Yeah, Wally can speak on my behalf. How about that?
Wally, Bubba said you can speak on his behalf.
Well, last time we seen Bubba, he was running from them on January 6th, wasn't he? And there was a coon dog chasing him.
Yeah.
Have you been back since then, Bubba?
Oh, yeah, I did come back in for the flood.
The flood? That's
yeah.
right, it flowed you back up.
Yeah.
Well, we're in flood 2 now.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we're probably going to have to do another episode on the flood.
The second flood, which we've never had but one big in the year. Now it looks like we're going to have 2. Let's hope it ain't 3. Unless, have you done introduced RT?
No.
Do I need to be quiet?
Yeah. The listening world would be happy if you was quiet. RT Fuzzell here. He's a Pagoda boy. How's it going, RT?
It's going good, Tony.
Is it going about as good as you look?
If it was going that good, y'all all be excited.
Well, we're definitely not excited.
No.
Well, here, I'm Tony Childress. Things been going good for me, and I'll give you a little background of what's been happening in the last week.
You didn't mention White not being here.
Well, he's not here.
Yeah, but he moved to Roe Ellen. And when you move out of Pagoda, you're not a Pagoda boy anymore. And your little bobblehead gets thrown away.
Well, is it Roel? And I thought it was a different.
Well, he calls it Vire. We call it Roel.
Yeah.
Well, hey. Now I'm gonna tell our special.
Hold on,
guest.
Tony.
Hey. Before Tony says it, I just want it to be known that there's 5 rivers in Dyer County.
5, okay.
Yes. Did you know there's 5 rivers in Dyer County?
One of them's a bayou, but it's considered a river.
Yeah. Well, what I was gonna say, Wally, is
what's the 5th one?
The Running Reelfoot Bayou.
You got 3 forks of the fork there, the Old Bayou, Running Reelfoot Bayou, 2 forks fork there, and then the Mississippi.
But calls the Bayou River.
It is a river.
It wasn't a river.
Well, it is now.
Who made the river?
The Pagoda boys.
Oh, well, maybe it is then.
Trump made it the Gulf of America, and we named the Bayou a river.
Bayou Pagoda.
No, it's the Bayou. It's the river. Anyway,
hold on. Let's change it to the Pagoda River.
I want you to get back to White. You said he moved out of Pagoda. He never was living in Pagoda.
Well, he had the love shack down here, and then love hit him, and now he's shacked. He's got a big spread out at Vire, Rowellen. We don't really know, but he's over 10 miles away, so he's off the thing. No more Whitey Pagoda boy.
He never going to be on again?
Well, we'll have to vote on that.
Till the next episode?
Probably.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's good. Yes, sir.
So I'd have to move to Pagoda to be a Pagoda boy?
No, you're a guest.
Okay.
So you are whether you like it or not.
I just want to make sure.
Your face and your voice and everything is going to go out into the world of the internet and all of that stuff that I don't really, probably going to go into the cloud. I don't really understand. So from now on out, you're going to be tied to us as a Pagoda Boy.
And as long as you don't leave us, you'll always be a Pagoda
No,
Boy.
he's always going to be one.
Once you become one, but Whitey turned on us. He left us.
Well, the only way I'm gonna leave, the next move will be to the cemetery.
Oh well. Once in, always in.
Yeah,
That's right.
You are one of us. This is our newest Pagoda Boy. You can come on anytime. You can come in and take my place, and it wouldn't take much to be the host of this chaos. Well, anyway, things have been going well. I missed the last 2 episodes because I had to do some work, things that,
I think they hit all-time records for viewership, too.
Yeah, people were sad wondering what had happened to
I
them.
think we hit that 24 we was looking for the whole year.
Probably.
We're going to go up to 30 as our goal now.
Good deal. We've done an episode on the flood that we had back in February, and unfortunately for us, and I think a lot of people, we're probably going to have another flood episode because here in the last, I guess since Wednesday, we have had what the Weather Service has called generational rains up in the Obion River Basin, Fork Deer River Basin. I saw today on National Weather Service it's rained since Wednesday, I guess on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 4 days, anywhere between 10 and 15 inches of rain. That's going to be more than I think the river systems can handle, and I'm fearful that what we're going to have here in Pagoda is going to be worse than we had back in the middle of February. I've checked some of the river gauges, and I hope I'm wrong. I checked some of the river gauges, and I see where Martin is already higher than it was back in February. Reeves is higher than it was back in February. The McKenzie gauge is higher than it was back in February. So
Mississippi.
the Mississippi is on the rise.
the North Fork, our duck hole is above the highest recorded.
Already?
Yeah.
So it's going to be not only in Pagoda, but it's going to be, I guess, an ordeal we're going to be dealing with probably the next week to 10 days. And then after that, it'll be the cleanup. And I guess we need to do an episode at some point in time on the cleanup from the February flood. But maybe we can do them all at one time. But anyway, that's something that, we've never had it. We've had big waters before. February was the biggest we'd ever had. Didn't think we'd, you never know. Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have even one as big or bigger, and I don't know what'll happen. I'm afraid it'll go over 78 Highway. But anyway, that's not what we're going to talk about today. We got a special guest. We got Mr. Maxey Maxadon. He's going to tell us a lot of interesting things that I think it's going to be interesting things about his life and some things that he's done in his life. And I think our listening world is going to really, really enjoy this. We're going to hear some first-time things. So I'm just going to call you Maxey, okay?
That'll work.
All right, Maxey, where were you born?
Well, I was actually born in Memphis, Tennessee,
Oh,
but
my
of
goodness.
course we're originally from Selmer. My mother, when she was pregnant with me, had pulled on the railroad tracks at Selmer. Car quit, train was coming, she panicked, but they drug her out of there, and the car got hit by the train. But because of that, they had taken her to Memphis because she was pregnant with me, and so I was born in Memphis.
Oh, did she get hurt?
She was fine.
She was fine in an accident. Now, you were born in what,
48.
1948. All right, born in 1948. You were raised in Selmer, Tennessee?
Kinda. I mean, I was... That was home. When I was probably 2 years old, my dad was overseas, was at the Battle of the Bulge. All the GIs came home and jobs were scarce. So a GI buddy of his from Salt Lake City, Utah, called him and said, "I've got you a job out here if you're interested." So we migrated to Salt Lake City, and then over the next several years, we went back and forth a couple of times. But Selmer was home.
And Selmer is in what county?
McNairy.
McNairy. That's down there at the on the border of Tennessee and Mississippi, correct?
Alcorn County, Mississippi, and McNairy County split the border.
Okay. Well, now that you talked about your dad being in the Battle of Bulge, I was going to ask you about about those things, but maybe that's another time. Now, where did you go to school?
Well, I went to school in Selmer. My dad had a business in Bolivar. We moved to Bolivar, but then I went out to Salt Lake, and I came back, and I actually graduated out of Bolivar.
Bolivar High School?
Bolivar, well, it was Central High School then in Bolivar, Tennessee. We were there for a couple of years.
Which is the county west of McNairy?
Correct.
Okay. And then when you graduated high school, what did you do?
Well, I went to Salt Lake City first and worked the summer out there. Had a summer job. A good friend of mine and I traveled out there and worked for the summer. We came back home, and both of us went to Nashville Auto Diesel College. And when I got out of Nashville Auto Diesel College, I came back to Selmer. And the topic that we're going to discuss today, that's where I met Buford, and that's where our relationship began.
Okay, now Buford
Pusser.
Buford Pusser, and Buford Pusser at that time was the
Sheriff of McNairy County.
He was the sheriff of McNairy County, and that time frame was what,
67.
1967 when you met Sheriff Pusser. Well, when you met him, did you go into law enforcement, or did you?
No, I was working at my uncle's station there. I'd gone to school to be a mechanic and a welder, and I was working at my uncle's station there, and Buford traded there, and I was a young guy that was a little wilder back in my younger days, and for some reason he just kind of took me under his wing, and we got to be close friends. And then on my 21st birthday, I don't know if any of y'all, you remember a restaurant in Jackson called George's?
I do not.
I do.
No,
I
me
don't.
neither.
Well, it was kind of a fancy restaurant anyway. For my birthday, Buford took me up there, and I'd been working with him some, just strictly with him. I wouldn't be out in the car by myself much. Occasionally I would, but strictly with him. And then on my 21st birthday, he took me out for supper, and he deputized me and gave me a badge for my 21st birthday.
So you became a deputy with the McNairy County Sheriff's Department when you turned 21.
That's correct.
And that was 69? 1962.
How old was Buford then?
In his 30s. He wasn't very old. When he was elected, he was actually the youngest sheriff in the state of Tennessee.
Now, he was elected when, I've done a little background. You can fill in the spaces, but he was in his 20s when he was elected, wasn't he? Okay. Now, he was a sheriff for how long was he a sheriff?
6 terms. Under the law then, you could serve 3 consecutive terms.
And terms then were
2 years.
2-year terms. They weren't 4-year terms like they are now. No. And then he got term limited out, right?
He did.
Okay. Now, during that period of time, back then there was 45 went through McNairy County? 45?
45 and 64.
Okay, 45 and 64, but they weren't 4-lane roads back then, were they?
No, 2-lane.
They were 2-lane roads. Now, McNairy County is describe McNairy County. Is it urban, rural?
No, it's rural. It's it's just a small town. Of course, Buford lived in Adamsville, which is like 12 miles from Selmer, and it's another small town. Probably 2,000 to 2,500 population both places.
So McNairy County was basically a rural county, then, and it kind of is now, correct?
Still is, yes.
It still is. Okay, well, this time frame is in the late 60s. Now, for our listening world, there was a movie roughly based, or maybe entirely based on Buford Pusser's life that's called Walking Tall.
That's correct.
And the star of, I guess, the person that portrayed Buford Pusser in that movie was what was his name?
Joe Don
Baker.
Joe Don Baker.
So let me interrupt you a second.
Yes,
tell
sir.
you how the name Walking Tall came.
That was my next question.
So Mort Briskin was with Bing Crosby Productions, and they're the one that contacted Buford about making a movie about his life. And Buford and I had gone to the motel to pick him up the morning that he came there, and the guy walks out of the motel, and he's got red shoes, red socks, red pants, red belt, red shirt. He's bald, but he's got hair around here, and it's down to his shoulders. And I looked over at Buford and said, this is going to be a long day. But he actually rode with us 3 days, and we took him to different places in the county, and we showed him different things, and we described to him what had gone on about the different things that had occurred. And then we had to carry him back to Memphis to catch his airplane, and he had a midnight flight or something like that. It was real late at night, so it was about 10:30, 11 o'clock, and we're going from Selmer to Memphis on 57 Highway, which goes through LaGrange, Tennessee. And we're driving down the highway, and he starts hollering back, ho, stop the car. And we're looking around thinking, you know, somebody's shooting at us or something like that's going to happen. Back up. So we back up. There's a sign on the side of the road. It's a Tennessee walking horse at stud named Walking Tall. And that's where the name of the movie came from.
So the name of the movie came from a
Tennessee walking horse.
Tennessee walking horse.
A sign on the side of the road.
Yep.
That's pretty crazy.
That is wild. I'd never heard that.
Me neither.
Now,
Now let me say this, boys. You're going to hear some things today that's probably going to blow up some of the beliefs and the things you've heard through your life, because I'm going to tell you the gospel of how it happened and what really went down. Now, I've refused to do this all my life with other people because I've been approached several times to talk about it. Guy was going to write a book, and I refused to do it. I know y'all, and I'm comfortable in this position. So what I tell you is the way it was.
well,
That's what we want.
Yes, sir.
How did the guy find out about Buford Pusser? How did the Bing Crosby people find out about it?
Well, Eddie Bond, I don't know if y'all remember, Eddie Bond had a radio show in Memphis. He was kind of a Memphis celebrity, and he was a songwriter and a singer, and he had written the song Buford Pusser Goes Hunting with a Bear Switch. And it had kind of got some recognition, and I don't know if somebody called Hollywood, I can't tell you that, but they started contacting us or contacting him, and one thing led to another. And then they called and said, we'd like for this gentleman to come down and meet with y'all, which was the gentleman I was telling you about with Bing Crosby Productions. And just a side note, that movie grossed more than any movie at that time other than Gone with the Wind, which Gone with the Wind was a major production movie, and this was really a B-rated movie. Everybody knows that if you've ever seen it.
We seen it back then,
I remember
going to the movies.
probably the first movie we went to.
Yeah.
I mean, we were young.
My daddy even went to the movies, and he never went to the movies.
Not
Him and
with us.
Mama went. Yeah.
So describe, now I've read descriptions of Buford Pusser, but you know how big he was and things like that. Tell us his physical features.
Well, I don't know. He's probably 6'3". He was a big man. He was hard. He was muscle. What made him so deadly was that he was the quickest big man I'd ever seen. I mean, I've seen him when we'd get in a situation where maybe a fight was going to start, and he would already hit somebody before they even knew the punch was coming. He just was super quick. He kept himself in real good shape.
And he was very athletic, too, wasn't he?
He was. He'd played football in high school. And, of course, he was in the Marines. And he'd come home on leave and had an automobile accident that broke his back. And when he got over that, the Marines wouldn't, they what do you call it when they let you out on medical leave?
Discharge.
Yeah, discharged him on a medical leave because of his back.
I'd read somewhere where he had been a wrestler at one time. Did you ever?
He was a professional wrestler when he was in Chicago.
So,
And we're going to talk about that later somewhere in this conversation about what happened when he came home from Chicago.
so when he came home from Chicago, is that when he started?
All right, let's talk about that.
Yeah. I'm just going to kind of turn it over to you now.
So he came home for a visit from Chicago, and he'd gone down to the state line to the Shamrock, which you keep bringing up, to the Shamrock Hotel, and they had gambling down there and all that. And Buford had got in there and won a pretty good chunk of change, and they didn't like that. So he left out, going to his car, going to go home, and they jumped him in the parking lot, 3 or 4 of them did, and beat him up pretty good and took the money away from him. So he went to the house, went to sleep, got up, went back to Chicago. 2 weeks later, he comes back home. And he goes down there at the Shamrock, and he sits out there in the parking lot, and as these guys come out, he exacts his revenge. Well, he gets arrested and taken to the Alcorn County jail and gets charged for assault and battery. So he bonds out and he goes back to Chicago where his job is and his wife is and goes to work. When it comes to court, well, when he had left Chicago, he told a buddy of his, wherever he was working up some kind of a factory, to punch his time card. So when it comes to court, his lawyer presents that time card as evidence, said, look, there's no way he was in Corinth, at the state line, because his time card shows that he was at work in Chicago, and that's all that got him out of that, or he'd go to jail.
So this hotel that he got, where he went down to have those activities, was that in Mississippi or was it in Tennessee?
It was actually in Tennessee. It was right smack on the line. I mean, parts of it, the parking lot, were in Tennessee, in Mississippi, but most of the building was in Tennessee.
Okay. Now that was on which highway?
45.
45 going into
Corinth.
Okay, going into Corinth.
Back in those days, McNair County was wet to beer, Alcorn County was wet to whiskey, but dry to beer. So you'd have the beer drinkers from Mississippi going north to McNair County to buy beer, and the whiskey drinkers from McNair County going south to Corinth to buy whiskey. Doesn't make any sense, but I mean, Alcorn County sold whiskey but not beer, and McNair County sold beer but not whiskey.
So somebody built an establishment on the county line to, I guess you could buy beer and whiskey.
Well, you could buy whiskey in McNair County too, but you buy it from a bootlegger.
A bootlegger.
We'll talk about them later too.
Okay.
Was gambling illegal then too?
No. Y'all, Phoenix City, Alabama was called Little Chicago, and they ran the state line down there. The Shamrock, the woman that owned the Shamrock that Buford killed, was part of the mob out of Phoenix City, Alabama. And that's where all the problems come from, and we'll talk about that later, about when they tried to kill him and they killed his wife. But it was operated basically, and the gambling and all that was ran out of Phoenix City, Alabama. Louise Hathcock, who owned the hotel, was part of that. You know, it was her hotel that was where the booze and the women and the gambling all occurred. But it was based part of Little Chicago, Phoenix City, Alabama.
So Buford Pusser gets in trouble, goes to court in Alcorn County, Mississippi, gets out of the trouble. What did he do then?
He went back and he worked for a while. He finally moved back home. Now, when he moved back home, and if you watch the movie, they got him kind of being involved in Sheriff Dickey's death, but that wasn't true. Sheriff Dickey was an alcoholic. I hope his family doesn't hear this. And he got drunk and he killed himself in a car, not intentionally.
Had a car crash?
Yeah. At that time, Buford had come home and gone to work for the Adamsville Police Department. He was a city cop in Adamsville. And when Sheriff Dickey got killed, that's when Buford ran for office the first time.
And he was in his 20s?
Yes.
Did he have an opponent? Do you remember?
I'm sure he did. That was before my time. I hadn't got back to McNair County when he first got elected for sheriff first time.
Okay, he got elected sheriff.
Yep.
And what happened after that?
Well, I mean, the thing about Buford is he couldn't stand for somebody to do anything against young people, kids, and old people. And he just enforced the law. And I mean, back in those days, we could enforce the law. And everything went pretty smooth until things got to happening at the state line. People getting beat up. They'd win money and they'd get beat up in the parking lot and get it taken away from them, and they were taking over the booze. You know, in those days we had bootleggers, and we always had a rule with the bootleggers. If you don't sell to kids and all that stuff, we won't bother you bad. And as long as you didn't, we didn't bother them. But they got to trying to get all the whiskey business, and other things were happening, so he got in his head he was going to shut the state line down, and that's when all the trouble started.
He was trying to shut down the Shamrock Hotel or motel, and then I guess other things that were going on.
That's correct.
Well, when were you involved with the sheriff's department then?
Not at first.
Not at first?
No. I mean, when I first started, before he ever deputized me, I was riding with him 3 or 4 nights a week. I mean, I had a job in the daytime. He'd come by and get me, and I'd just go with him. Of course, I carried a gun, and we'd do like every sheriff does. You enforce law. You went out and went in the joints and make sure people wasn't doing things they shouldn't be doing and all that kind of thing. And then, shortly before I got deputized, that we started having all those problems down there. That's when he got in his mind he was going to shut that down there, and that's when it all started.
Well, what was the first incident that it all got started? What got it all started?
Well, it was a combination of things, and I mean, there was a man named Towhead Wyatt, and Towhead Wyatt is the one we always think we thought was behind killing Buford's wife and trying to kill him. I mean, it's a miracle they didn't kill him that night, or that morning. But we would get called down there, and it would be not what we were called about, and we'd roll in there, and everything would just calm down when he walked in. We'd leave, get 10 miles up the road, and somebody'd call us that they're doing it again. We'd turn around, we'd go back down there, and it just got to where they were dodging what we were trying to get done. And I don't know, we just finally let nature take its course.
Well, hopefully you'll tell us how nature took its course here in a minute. Now, you just mentioned that the sheriff's wife got killed. Okay. Tell us about that.
All right. You'd asked me earlier about what got Buford going, and I told you that Eddie Bond had started a song, and then David Marsh, and he's an author, I don't know where he came from, had come in and written the book, The 12th of August. And that's what got Hollywood's attention. And that book, The 12th of August, is the day that Pauline got killed. And we would get calls, anonymous phone calls, and they're, you need to go out and check this out. Well, you go out there and there'd be 2 U-Haul trailers backed up, and they'd be transferring unbonded, untaxed whiskey from one truck to another and be distributed to bootleggers. So the morning of the 12th of August, they were going to leave that day to go on vacation to Florida. And the phone call came in that morning about 3 o'clock. They'd actually called Carl Pusser, Buford's dad was the jailer, and had actually called the jail, and he wouldn't call Buford because he knew that they were going to go on vacation that day. So they got his home number, and they called him at home because back then we didn't have cell phones. And that's what he thought it was. He thought it was something like that he was going to. Well, it woke her up, and because they were going to leave to go to vacation, well, she said, come on, I'll go with you. So she gets in the car with him, and they're going out to where the anonymous call had given them directions to, and she was actually bent over pushing back then you had 8-track tapes, and she was bent over pushing the 8-track tape when the first bullets come through, and that, we think it was an AR. We think it was an M16 that come through, and it took her head off, basically, and it blew a hole in the dash of that car about that wide. Well, he just stomped on it to get away from the shooting, and he got down the road about 10 miles, and he thought he had lost him, and she had fell over in his lap, and she was gurgling, which she was dead, so that was her breath coming out and all that, and he was trying to attend to her, and they were after him with their lights off, and they'd come around him and got in front of him, and then they just opened up again on him. And he jumped out of the car and ran towards them and actually got his hands on one of the gun barrels that was sticking out of the car. And he said he could remember the guy hollering, get out of here, get out of here. And, of course, they took off. Well, they shot him. There's a picture, and you can see his 2 teeth and all of his jaws just blown away. He got back to the car, and he got out on the highway, got out of the country roads where he was at, and he got out on 45 highway, headed back towards Selmer, and he'd lost so much blood, I guess he passed out, I don't know. And there's a milkman, Barber's Milk, down in that part of the country, and Jake was the guy that drove that truck that worked Selmer. He came along and saw the car sitting there, and he could tell it had been shot up, and he got out, and he walked up and looked in the car, and he went into shock. Well, Buford had tried to call somebody on the police radio, and Hugh Kirkpatrick at the time was chief of police in Selmer. He had once been a highway patrolman, and of course Buford couldn't talk with his jaw being blown away. But he heard enough that he kind of got a general description where they was at, so they dispatched cars down there, and she was dead in his lap, and he was weak from loss of blood, but he was still alive. In fact, when they got him out, they were going to put him in a stretcher to the ambulance, and he wouldn't let him. He got up and walked to the ambulance and got in the back of the ambulance.
Now, that was for our listening, where a lot of our listeners, they've only grown up with cell phones and things. Communication back then was a lot more, I guess I'm going to call primitive. It wasn't as available as it is now. You had no cell phones.
Tony?
Yeah.
You know how old you making me feel? Primitive. That was the word you used, primitive.
Well, not as.
No, we didn't have cell phones, thank God, because we dished out justice.
And you communicated via like a CB radio or.
Well, you had
band.
police radios in the vehicles, and of course, other than that, you had your phones. That's it. I mean, landlines.
Yes, you had to go to a house, make a telephone call. Now, how big was the McNairy County Police Force at that time?
Oh, I mean, you had the chief and probably 3 city cops.
And then the sheriff's department had.
About the same. No, that changed under Buford too, because when we would bust a steal, we weren't so much interested in stopping whiskey being made as we were the revenue. One night we had a steal we knew was about ready to run. You know, they'd get their mash set, ready to go, and we'd kind of keep an eye on it. We'd know when they were going to be with all hands on deck when they were running the whiskey. And they had guns and vehicles, and even that copper out of those steals brought in county revenue. He actually gave me an AR one night. We had a steal that was about ready to run, and he took me out, and I'm talking about in the back middle of the woods, you know where a steel's going to be, and dropped me out with a radio, a walkie-talkie, and he said, when they come to run this steal, you hold them, call for help, and we'll come get you. Well, you know, I'm 21 years old, out there in the woods laying by myself, and I'm thinking, you know, these guys come in here, they're going to kill me if they find me. So I made up my mind, if they come in, I'm just going to raise up and start shooting, dump both clips, because I had 2 clips in my anyway. But we would catch them, and you'd get the pickup trucks and the guns and the copper out of the steel, and we'd sell that, and that brought in county revenue, and we ended up, we had 5 cars and 11 deputies at one time. And that was all from revenue that we created through the sheriff's department.
Now I can remember, and I hadn't watched this movie in probably 40 years. There was a scene in the movie, Walking Tall, where they were busting a steal, and if I recall it correctly, it was some deputy was being called out for working with the other side. Was that Hollywood?
Y'all are one to stick. Hollywood changed. Hollywood, in the movie, they got Buford wearing a uniform with a badge. Buford wore custom-made suits. I mean, now, if we were going in the woods or something, he'd put on something else, but I'm talking about he dressed. Now, he was very meticulous about his dress, his automobile. So Hollywood got a hold of things, and they changed it up. You know, in Hollywood, there was a black deputy, Aubrey. Well, people claim I'm Aubrey because he and I were always close because we didn't have a black deputy. And then we had a black, what do you call them?
Jailer?
No, the guys that the county elects for police and constable. We had a black constable that worked over in that, you know, in the black side of town. But
so there was no big stick.
No
big stick.
No.
That was a Hollywood.
Absolutely.
And they did a good. I mean, they did a good job with that imagination. I want to go back to his, his wife and the shooting and things. His wife was murdered,
Correct.
And he was shot. Did they ever prosecute anybody for that?
No.
Nobody was ever arrested.
No. Now the once again, going back to what I told you earlier, Towhead White was behind it. We're sure of that. Who was out of Phoenix City, Alabama. Now the actual gunman we heard the ones that we thought that it were, that two of them had got killed in Chicago, one of them had just disappeared, and there was a fourth one that we never knew what happened to him.
So they were not locals.
No, they were not local.
They were called in to. Okay.
It was a called-in hit.
Okay. So after he got shot, that was in what, 60 something? That'd have been 60 something.
68 or 9, I don't.
And after I could say he got his jaw blowed off. I'm sure he had a time of convalescence. What happened then?
Well, in the movie, they got him coming to his wife's funeral, and that wasn't the case. He was in the hospital. Like I say, he had serious injuries, and from that day forward, all of this was plastic surgery. The first time my wife ever met him, he had taken us out to eat when he found out we were going to get married, and he'd get stuff on his chin because he had no feeling in it, and I'd say, wipe your mouth. And, well, it just embarrassed him when I did it in front of my wife. But he came back, and I mean, it wasn't like he came back just bound and determined to shut them down there. But that, in his mind, I know that's what he had, you know. And when he killed Louise, in the movie, they got her shooting at him with a shotgun. In real life, she called him. He'd gone down there, and her office in that motel was the first motel room. And she'd called him over into his office, said, I need to talk to you. And when he walked in, she pulled out a .38 pistol and pointed it at him and clicked, and it misfired. And he had trying to get out of the way, and he fell over between the wall and the bed, and of course he always carried that .357 Magnum, and he pulled it out and he shot her and killed her. We found a box of super valves. I don't know if you know what super valves are, but they're hollow points that all law enforcement used to use them. And we found a brand new box of super valves with 6 shells gone, and those were the 6 that was in that gun that she shot at him with, and that one shell misfired. The good Lord was looking over Buford Pusser that night.
So why was she angry, upset with him?
Well, he was shutting down her operation down there.
Were they making a lot of money?
They were making a lot of money.
I mean, any ideas what they were?
Oh, not a clue. I mean, they had every game you could think of going. They had prostitution, they had gambling, they had illegal booze. I mean, they had it all. And I mean, they're probably taking in at that time, I'm sure several $100,000 a year, which you're talking about in the '60s. That's pretty good money.
Now I've read a little bit where they would, what they call, I think you'd call it roll their, I mean, it was a hotel, right? Mm-hmm. Anybody could come and stay at the hotel. I don't know.
I mean, only people coming through that didn't know any better stayed at the motel.
Well, that's what I meant. I mean, it was on a main thoroughfare.
Yeah, it was on 45 Highway.
Which went from, I think 45 Highway goes from
Selmer to Conrad.
Yeah, but it's a long highway. It goes through Jackson. I mean, it doesn't go
all the way to the Gulf. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes up through
Illinois.
Illinois.
Goes through Tupelo and on down through there.
And it was the main thoroughfare.
Yeah.
For people traveling north and south. And I mean, did they ever mess with this people that weren't from around there? Did they ever?
Occasionally, we'd get a call where somebody had spent the night, come out, get in their car, and find out something had been gone. Most of the time, when people were staying there, it seemed like they were going south. They were very seldom going north. I don't know why that is, but they'd come out and something been stolen out of their car. But as far as doing anything to them personally, no, we never gotten that. I ever remember any calls about that.
Well, now, were you there when the shooting with the proprietor of the Shamrock Hotel was there?
Well, that's what I was just talking about her. She was the proprietor. No, I wasn't with him that night.
You wasn't with him that night. Now, once she was out of the scene, did the business shut down?
It pretty much, yeah. But by that time, that's what she was upset about. By that time, we'd pretty much shut her down. I mean, we were going down there every day.
You putting the squeeze on?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there, I mean, you said gambling, drinking, prostitution, and things of that nature. Was there any, like, besides that area right there, that was there any activities outside of that y'all were involved in?
You talking about? I mean, countywide, we were always enforcing law. I don't know that I'm understanding your question.
Was that was that the hotbed of all the criminal activity?
It was part of it, but it wasn't all of it. Of course, they were selling dope too, and dope back in those days was something kind of new. You know, we weren't. We were to that point in time. I think our country. You know, a lot of the young guys were coming back from Vietnam, and they knew what marijuana was, and it was starting to kind of take hold, and they were selling it down there. But we had other parts in the county. I mean, the joints, there was a club called the Anchor Club that we went to, and then Clayton's, and that was every Friday and Saturday night. You were there, you know, be fights in the parking lot, and always something going on, shootings and stuff like that.
Those were like beer joints, or I'd call them roadhouses or beer joints.
That's what they were.
Huh. What? Anything else? I mean, what would be a typical day with Buford Pusser? I mean, just a typical day.
Well, you didn't start till about 6 o'clock. Got to remember, we'd be out till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Let's take one of these beer joints you're talking about. Somebody goes up there and pulls a gun. We have to go up there, and normally there's a fight going on. You got to get in the middle of that and stop it, and sometimes you got involved in it. Then you get them out, and you get them. Sometimes you got to take them to the hospital and get them sewed up, and then you take them to jail. And by the time you get everything done, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. So you go home, you go to bed, and then you start the next day at 4 o'clock again. Now, Monday through Thursday, it wasn't that bad. You could get some sleep at night. We were, and I've got all kind of. They called us one night to come up there, and there was a one-armed guy, and they called him Crow, and Jim Moffitt and Petey, who were two of the other deputies, went out there with me. We went in two different cars. Those two were together, and I was by myself. And we pulled up there, and they were all out in the parking lot, and everybody had formed a circle. And Crow was out there, one-armed guy's out there in the middle of that thing, just daring anybody. He said, "Come on, I'll fight anybody, you know, just drunk and crazy and all that." And Petey says, "Go get him, Maxey." And I thought, well, you know, that's a little weird, but no problem. He's a one-armed guy. I can handle that. You can't cuff a one-armed man. I got the cuffs on his one hand, and then he started whooping me with it. And I'm talking about that old boy was putting a beating on me. And I finally got him to the car, and I got the back door open. Of course, Petey and them are sitting back there just laughing their butts off, you know, because I'm getting whooped on pretty good.
By a one-armed guy.
Yeah. So I finally get him to the car, and I get the back door open, and he won't put his leg in there. And I kept telling him, I say, "Crow, if you don't put your leg in there, son, I'm going to mash." I'm mad. I mean, I'm hurt. I'm mad. So I just start banging the door. He finally puts his leg in, so I get him in the car. And back in those days, we didn't have them screens between the seats like they got now, or we didn't have them. And so I get him down to the jail, never peeps in that back seat, never says a word, never caused a bit of problem. I'm thinking, man, this is all right. So I get him to the jail. And in Selma, to go to jail, you got to go up an elevator. Jail's on the very top. So I get him out, and I get him into the elevator, and never has made a move. When the elevator door closes, son, he lets loose on me, and I just get over in the corner and try to cover, because he's souped up on whatever he was on. Well, Carl could hear the racket coming up that elevator shaft. And Mr. Carl they had a fiberglass factory in Corinth, and that fiberglass would come out that extruder hot, and somebody had cut him off a piece of that and put a handle on it and drilled the center out and poured hot lead down in there. And when that door come open, Carl hit Crow with that stick he had one time, and it was.
That's all it took?
Yeah.
Well, I got to ask you this. How far into the process of getting Crow did you realize you couldn't cuff a one-armed man?
About 3 minutes.
About 3 minutes?
Yeah. I mean, I got him cuffed, but I didn't have to put the cuff on, and I wasn't going to cuff him to me.
You got one arm cuffed, and then you started looking for the other one?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Was he a local?
Yeah, he was a local. We had when we'd get somebody like him, it was really rowdy. We had two federal prisoners there. There were two blacks, and they played poker every day for push-ups. You know, they'd bet push-ups like we'd be betting money, and if they'd lose, they'd do. And these guys had arms on them like this right here, and they were there. You know, that was home for them till the feds come and got them. We'd had them for, I don't know, like 9 months at that time. So when we get somebody like Old Crow that was pretty rowdy, because them boys wanted their sleep. You know, they lived a normal jail life. They wanted to sleep, get up in the morning, do their thing, have breakfast. We'd lock them up in there. And you'd hear back there, and about 2 minutes it'd get quiet. It'd be all over.
Well, did you have any other incidents with people like that where you had a difficult time apprehending someone?
Well, we had. Now you just got me telling stories.
Well, yeah.
So Buford had bought a brand new black Grand Prix Pontiac with I don't know, what was the biggest motor Pontiac made back in them days? 420 something.
427, 454.
No,
They had a
that's
full
over
they
40.
had a 442 at one time, didn't they?
Well, no, this was a Pontiac, like a 426. You had two fours on it. Really a cool-looking car. That old long-nose Grand Prix Pontiac, solid black, and man, he was proud of that car. We got a call that there was a steal in such and such a location, and that's how you usually found them. Would be somebody rat somebody out because they got mad at them. So we go down there, and we go down this old dirt road for a while. We park the car, and we get out, and we're going back to where we told her still by such and such a creek back there, and we were hiking back, and he said, "You smell something burning?" "Yeah, I do." We turned around and looked back, son, the black smoke's just boiling up in the sky, and whoever had called us had set us up, and that brand new Pontiac burnt to the ground. There wasn't no steel down there.
Just a big fire.
Yeah. So there was a fire one time, and Buford was up there directing traffic. I was on the other end, and he was on this end, and the car was coming along, and he had told him to stop, and the guy gunned it straight at him, and he went up on the hood, on the windshield, and whoever was driving that car had a knife. Buford was hanging on to the windshield wipers, and the guy was stabbing him in the back. And he finally rolled off the car, and the guy got away. To this day, we don't know who he was or what it was all about, but he stabbed Buford 7 times in the back.
You didn't catch him.
The guy was there was a guy called Russ Hamilton down there. Earlier I told you about Hugh Kirkpatrick, who was chief of police. And one time he had been sheriff, and one time he'd worked for the highway patrol. But anyway, this guy had staked his wife. He'd killed his wife and staked her out in the woods. And the way they found her was a neighbor's dog come to the house carrying a human arm. So they arrested him, and they prosecuted him, and he went to the pen. Well, he got out. He served his time, and he got out, and he had a little old apartment up there, a little one-room apartment. And he was drunk and shooting a gun. And Hugh Kirk was police chief, and he went up there, and the guy hollered through the door, "If you come in, Hugh, I'm going to kill you." Well, they called us, so Buford and I went up there. And Buford went up and banged on the door and told him to come out, and he hollered again, if you come in, I'm going to kill you. So Buford kicked the door in, and immediately, it's not like in the movies, them guns start going off. And the guy, Buford pulled his .357, and he shot him. He discharged his weapon twice, and both bullets went right there on his forehead, and it just slammed him up against the forehead, against the wall, and he slid down, brain matter and all that. Well, of course, I ducked when the shooting started, but I pulled my pistol and I spun around, and Buford was already putting his in the holster. He said, "Put your gun away." And I did. And I looked at him, and he was all bloody on this side over here. And that guy had shot and hit his handles on his pistol, that wood handle on his pistol, and it had splintered off a piece of wood about as long as my finger, and it had gone into his side there. And he had still pulled that gun and shot him twice, right between the eyes. And he pulled his shirt up, and I could see that piece of wood sticking out of there. And he said, "Well, pull it out." And I pulled it out, and like I say, it was
That was about 2 inches long?
Yeah.
My goodness. There was a question I was going to ask you. Well, tell us another story. I'll remember my next question.
So can I tell you one on my wife?
Yeah.
So we were going out to dinner, her and Buford and I. He's driving, I'm sitting on the right side, and Debbie's sitting in the middle. And we meet a car, and it didn't take a genius to see this guy was exceeding the speed limit by quite a bit. And my wife says, which we never dealt with traffic, but my wife says, you don't chase down speeders? Wrong thing. So we done one in Batman, Kurt flip around the highway. We take off after him, well, the guy accelerates, and we're on 142 highway, and I don't know if y'all have ever been to McNair County. 142 highway is the curviest highway probably in West Tennessee. And we're running 120 miles an hour. Debbie's got hold of my leg over there just making me bleed. She's opened her mouth. Anyway, we run the guy down, and it's a buddy of ours. He pulls over, and we're all hee-haw and laughing about it. But my wife never asked him again to chase speeders.
Well, then Hollywood came to town. Now, was the movie shot in McNair County?
Chester County. And the reason it was shot in Chester County and Henderson because Clifford Coleman, who was elected sheriff after Buford and hated Buford, would not let him, the sheriff controls the courthouse, and he would not let him use the courthouse. So they moved it to Chester County, and that brought in quite a bit of revenue, to the county because they paid people just to stand on the street and.
So Chester County, just for those who don't know, is just right north.
Between Jackson and Selmer. And Chester County agreed to let him use the courthouse and the streets and stuff to do the filming of the movie. Of course, they stayed there and they ate there. And I mean, people, locals who didn't know that were all mad because they didn't film the movie in McNair County. And they blamed Buford for it, but it wasn't Buford that did it. It was Clifford Coleman.
He wasn't allowed to have access to the
He wouldn't let him use the courthouse.
So how long did the filming take?
They were actually there about 7 months, but then they got back to Hollywood and do what Hollywood does, so it's probably another 10 months or a year before the movie actually came out.
Now, he wasn't sheriff at this time?
No.
Okay, he'd already...
Oh, he was sheriff when they were filming it.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, but he wasn't sheriff when it came out. He was actually technical advisor on it. We'd go up there and they'd say, so how did this happen? And we'd give them some, well, this is the way it went down. Well, then they'd put the Hollywood spin on it. Like when he went in the movie, he goes to the club and he crashes into the, and that didn't happen that way.
Yeah, in the movie when he's all decked out, when he's all casted up to his face.
Go to his wife's funeral, and that
Yes.
wasn't, he was still in the hospital.
I think, no, I may be wrong. In one part of the movie, it showed him getting, like, I remember as a kid, they ripped his shirt off, held him down, and cut his chest, cut him up real bad.
Well, he got cut up, like that incident I was telling you about where the guy was stabbing him in the back. He got in a fight with a guy down there that cut him several times, but no, they didn't rip his shirt open and cut him up like that.
I can remember that as a kid.
There was a guy down there, and he's dead now, so I guess I could use his name. His name was Lyndon Ernest, and when Lyndon was sober, he was the greatest guy in the world, but he was Jekyll and Hyde. When he'd drink, he'd just go berserk. And everybody had always said if there's anybody anywhere that could whip Buford Pusser, it'd be Lyndon Ernest. Well, it all came to a head one night at my uncle's service station. I had a 55 Chevrolet, and I had a fiberglass front end on it, a hot rod that I loved. I put everything I had into it. And Lyndon was standing right there in front of my car, and Buford come up and said, "Come on, Lyndon, you're going to jail." He'd been in the station there and threatened some people. And Lyndon said, no, Buford, I'm not going to jail. So he pulled his teeth out. He had false teeth, and I don't know why he did that. And he turned around and he laid them on the hood of my car. And when Buford hit him that first time, it slammed him down on that fiberglass hood, and it just sprung him back up. And he hit him the second time, and then we had to lift him up and put him in the car and took him to jail. But he did go to jail.
What happened to his teeth?
Probably still laying on the hood of that car.
So, are you in the movie? Did you make a cameo in the movie? No, they didn't get you in it.
Well, they asked us all if we wanted nobody. We don't do that.
Now, after he was term limited out, what did he do after that?
He's actually doing personal appearances for the movie.
Okay.
Bing Crosby Productions was paying him $1,000 a day, plus all expenses, to travel all over the world. He went to London. I mean, that movie was a big deal back in those days, and they were paying him $1,000 a day and all his expenses, travel expenses and whatever, and all he'd travel all over the world doing, the thing that movie was, he was a living legend, and because he was still alive, and it was profitable for him.
Now, I've never had a movie made about me. Maybe somebody in the future, if anybody wants to tell my story. But do you think he made much money from the story of him? I mean, do you have any idea?
Yeah, I got a pretty good idea. I read the contract. Remember earlier I told you that movie grossed second only to Gone with the Wind, which was millions of dollars. And there was a contract. I read the contract about what percentage of that money he was going to get, and it was enough to have taken care of him for the rest of his life. When they were in Henderson, he had met a lawyer up there, and I won't mention his name, but anyway, he started handling Buford's personal business. And when Buford got killed, the family had pretty well been cut out of the movie money. The lawyer ended up with it. Now, I also worked for a living with another occupation back then, and I was in the insurance business. And I'd sold Buford a $500,000 life insurance policy, and the beneficiaries on it were half to his daughter, Dewana, and half to his mother. And she was named executor of the estate. Well, a shyster came in down there and told Miss Pusser that he knew who had killed Buford and he could bring him to prosecution if he had the money, and she gave him all of her $250,000 and $176,000 of Dewana's money, which that had to be put back because she was bonded for being the executor of the estate, so she could do whatever she wanted to with her $250, but she couldn't spend Dewana's, but she did. But the insurance company put her that $176,000 back in. Dewana got her $250,000. That all went to court, and that was you talking about a kangaroo court, that was it. I mean, this guy he was a shyster, and I heard the judge tell him, I was called as a material witness, and I heard the judge tell him 50 times if he told him once he was going to hold him in contempt of court, and never did. Anyway, long story short, nothing ever happened. He walked.
Well, after the movie success and all of those things, did he ever go back into law enforcement?
Ran for office and lost.
Ran for sheriff and lost?
He was out 2 years when he was doing personal appearances, and he ran for office again, and Clifford, who had refused to let Bing Crosby Productions use the courthouse, and the movie had got moved to Chester County, politicked that Buford was the cause that they didn't get to film the movie in McNairy County, and turned the public against him. And that's a true story. And so he lost. And Clifford's the one that wouldn't let him use the courthouse.
So now I read somewhere was he ever employed as the Adamsville's police chief or anything?
Yeah, he was police chief.
He was police chief of Adamsville?
Yeah.
Okay, now that was in probably 70, 72.
That was right after that was in the 60s. That was right after he came back from Chicago.
Oh, okay. So no longer sheriff. And were you still living in McNairy County when he had his car accident?
I was. Well, actually, I was living in Alcorn County, Mississippi. He had flown. They were going to make another movie. And they had told him they wanted him to play himself in the second movie. He had flown to Hollywood to do a screen test. And I had the Corvette. The Corvette was a gift from a Chevrolet dealer in Florence, Alabama. And he left it with me. I had the vet at the station. And he came home, went to the fair that night, left the fair, started home to Adamsville, had the car wreck that killed him.
Car wreck that killed him.
And all that, the newspapers and all that came out, and people said somebody had tampered with his Corvette and all that, and that wasn't true. I had it. I knew it wasn't tampered with. That's when the Commercial Appeal interviewed me, and the words that I said were in the paper the next morning, but taken totally out. They wanted me to say so bad that I thought somebody had killed him. Had done something to the Corvette or something, and that wasn't it. He just had a car wreck.
Just had a car wreck.
Yeah, he has two speeds when he was driving. That's wide open and stop.
So probably, I've actually driven by that, not knowing where it was, but I saw the plaque.
Yeah.
And stopped and read it. Was that now that road now is like
It's 4-lane.
It's 4-lane now. What was it then?
2-lane.
It was a 2-lane road.
Yeah, and he had a few drinks that night. Who knows? A deer runner. Who knows? I can't tell you. Nobody else can. We don't know what happened. But I've got the accident report, and he slid sideways, I think, 186 feet, and there's a little embankment there about as high as that table right there. And when it hit that, it rolled over. It was a T-top, and he didn't have his seatbelt on, and his head came out enough just to get caught on that, and it snapped his neck, and it rolled back on the wheels. And he was dead when it rolled back on the wheels.
He was dead. Yeah. Now, I've seen newsreel footage of his funeral procession and things, and it seemed like it was a lot of people there. Was it?
Yeah, there was a lot of people there. Buford had dated Miss Tennessee at the time, or had in the past. And there was some movie stars there, and he and Jodan Baker had a falling out, the guy that played him in the movie. The one thing you didn't call Buford Pusser was a son of a bitch. He loved his mama, and that was a personal insult to him. And Jodan had said, I don't think he really meant it saying you are, but he implied that to Buford, and Buford actually decked him.
Well, did he come to the funeral?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I guess they made amends.
Well, that was all. He couldn't afford not to come to the funeral. He played the man in the movie.
Well, I've never played. I guess that's played anybody in the movie either.
That's Hollywood.
Well, that's all interesting. I've done a lot of talking. Bubba, Wally, RT, do y'all have any questions?
It's interesting to me because I was reading up about it because I knew he was going to do it, and then some of the stuff that Mr. Maxey's told us is completely opposite from what I've read on the, today.
I'm sitting there with Trump on my ears saying fake news has always been around.
That's right.
When it comes to the news.
Well, I told y'all earlier, that morning Commercial Appeal, when I read what they said, I said from then on I'd never do this. I'd never give another interview. And I've had people over the years. I've got a .357 Magnum that Buford gave me, and I gave it to my dad. And my dad died. I got it back, so I kind of got double sentimental value in the gun. And the guy in Gatlinburg that had the police museum, he had one section dedicated to Buford. The old Corvette, burned out Corvette, was there, and Miss Pusser had given him one of Buford's badges. Well, somebody had told him I had that gun, and he called me back in the time when I could have sure used the money and offered me big bucks for that gun, but I never would sell it. And people came wanting to interview, and there was a guy, like I said, writing a book one time on to talk to me, and I've never really sat down and talked about it till here.
Well, we're thankful that you have, and like what Bubba said, I said after we talked the other day, I said, well, I'm gonna read up on it because it's been, like I said, probably 40 years since I watched the movie, but there's been a remake of that movie with
Dwayne Johnson, Rock. Yeah.
Well, there's one before that. There was a Walking Tall Part 2, and then that one with Dwayne The Rock, and there was actually a TV series, a Walking Tall TV series. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that came out of it. Now, you've read and heard stuff all your life about Buford was crooked and he took payoffs, and I'm here to attest to it. He did not do that. Now, he wasn't a perfect guy, but he enforced the law. Now, sometimes our means were a little crude, but it got the job done.
Yeah, they need to be more crude now, but
I agree.
because they can't because of them cell phones.
That's right.
But he's just a good old country boy. What he thought was right, and he was willing to do it.
We were walking into a restaurant that's called the Southland in our summer one night, and there was two boys sitting there, and they were smoking dope. I mean, you could smell it when you walked by. I had the windows down. We walked by, and Beaver stopped, backed up, and he said, "Boy, what are you smoking?" And the kid, I can't say what he said here, but he come out with some cuss words. And Beaver just reached in and got him by the hairhead and just jerked him out of that window. So what'd you say, son? I didn't say anything, sir.
Just well, if you go to the internet and type in his name, do a search, you will get probably more articles that try to imply that he was,
Crooked.
Yeah, an outlaw, was doing things to help other organizations and took that. But I guess that's what you call clickbait or something.
I was probably with him more than anybody, and the people that know down there will tell you that. And if he ever did any of that, I never saw it. And I'm talking about I was with him. We'd have a few drinks, and we'd go down there to where they killed Pauline and they attacked him, and he would talk about that, and he would cry like a baby. That's why I know so much about it, because he would walk me through that. I mean, that was his way of just letting it off, and I mean, I can't tell you why he did it, but
just
he
therapy. I guess that's what you talk to somebody about it. I mean, you can go and read things that say he was the one that did it, and I thought that.
There's a guy that's come out lately that's done that, hasn't he? I mean, that's his way of getting fame. Some guys come up and said, "Oh, they're gonna dig her up because something and all this."
Well, they did do that.
I don't know. I've heard something about that too. The people have said that he was involved in her death. That was a '73 Plymouth or a '67. I don't remember, but that thing had bullet holes in it. If you think he was involved in her death, you're crazy. His blood and her blood are just all over that car. The FBI actually took the car and tore it apart, searching for evidence, and then we had the car put back together, and we used it as a patrol car for 3 or 4 years after that, and up under those rain gutters and places, there were still spatters of her brains and stuff. I mean, I couldn't get in the car. That's all I could think about when I get in there, but I mean, there's no way.
Well, I wasn't there. I don't know. But I would think if you were going to do something like that, you wouldn't shoot yourself too.
No.
I mean, it's just
not that many times and that badly. Yeah.
Well, he had to have so many surgeries after that. All that plastic surgery his eyes got to pulling down like this, and he had to have. I guess the last surgery he had, they went up in his scalp up here and just cut it and just kind of slid his face up and sewed it back up. But, I mean, it was a horrible injury that he went through. No, that's crazy.
Yeah. But were you putting that to rest because you was with him and you said like you said you went there with him a bunch of times after y'all, I guess, got in the cups a little bit and.
Well, my wife, we were friends more than working associates, and my wife, we'd go out together with him, or he'd go out with us, ever how you want to put it like that. And my wife tell you, any time he was around ladies, he was a perfect gentleman. I mean, he just wasn't in his genes to be what some people claim.
Did now his dad worked for the sheriff's department as well?
He was a jailer.
He was a jailer. Well, I take it his mama and dad.
Both of them were dead now.
Both of them passed away. Now, did he had how many children?
Well, he only had one, Dewana, but there were two more that Pauline had when he married her, and he raised them. I mean, he did right by them, but he was always partial to Dewana because she was his daughter. Mike and Diane were Pauline's children from a previous marriage.
Wally, you got any questions, or Bubba?
Well, when did you leave Selmer?
Do you partake?
When did you leave Selmer?
Let me think about that a minute. I mean, I was down there, and then I went to Corinth, and then I came back, probably the mid-'70s.
Mid-'70s.
Yeah.
When did you leave law enforcement?
After Buford went out of office.
In about 70
the
or
last
something
time,
like that.
yeah.
You got any questions about the activities that took place?
I don't guess.
Well, do you or don't you?
No, I mean, not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, sometimes.
Well, this may not have been as exciting as what you wanted it to be. But
No,
it
it's-
is.
Oh, I love
yeah.
it.
It's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say something here. Of course, your son's a dear friend of ours, and that's how we knew you knew something about it. And then you opening it up to us, it means a lot to us.
It really
We
does.
thank you. But it also tells me where Jason gets his drive and his loyalty. There's no doubt you had it with Buford, and Jason has them same qualities in him.
Jason's a self-made man.
He's a self-made man, but he's got that same drive and
He does.
that loyalty to people and doing the right thing. And
He does.
that's why your word means so much, because you're honest. I mean, you might be a little gruff sometimes.
He's not primitive, though, Wally.
He's not primitive.
Well,
It was just back in the primitive time.
Wally, I appreciate you saying that, but I don't rate with my son. He's a better man than I.
Well, I ain't saying he's not a better man, but he come from you. You know, we pulled up in that parking lot out there at the work that time. We went hunting. You said, y'all boys parked here too long. I said, how are you, Mr. Maxidon? Because you enjoyed it. I mean, you was not being mean to us, but that's the way you are.
I'm a little rough around the edges.
Yeah, but I could see it in your eyes. You wasn't mad. You just aggravating us.
Hey, I got a question. Back around that time, that type of activity was happening in Selmer, Alcorn County. Was anything like that happening in the other places on the border of Mississippi and Tennessee that you was aware of?
No. You had that going on here, Tony.
Well, I tell you,
And y'all had a sheriff here that was pretty tough, too.
we've had some sheriffs that were pretty tough. We've had sheriffs go to the federal pen. I mean, we've had.
But this relates back to what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Buford had the backbone to go out there and face it and do what needed to be done. That's what we're lacking in this country today, is the backbone to do what's right. That's what that man right there is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a sheriff here that would enforce the law. And sometimes enforcing the law, you got to kind of get a little out there to do what needs to be done.
Do you think that criminal activity was located? Why was that Selmer such a hot spot? You think it had to do with the road that come through there?
Oh, I'm saying the location had a lot to do with it. I think more of what I'd said earlier about beer being sold in McNair County and dry to whiskey, and Alcorn County being wet to beer and dry. Wet to whiskey and dry to beer. It makes no sense. But who got in there and who started that? Because the Hathcocks they're from McNair County. Her son Buford killed this boy's mother. And one night he and I are sitting down there. We're actually looking for somebody else.
You and Buford.
Yeah, me and Buford. And her son has a 1966 white with a black vinyl top Dodge Charger with a Hemi in it. I remember it well. And he comes by us, and if he's running 5 miles an hour, he's running 120. And we go after him because we know who it is. And I'm thinking, what is this going to be like? Because Buford's already killed his mama. And we run him down, and Buford gets out, and he's just, yes, sir, and no, sir. And Mr. Hascock, you know you were exceeding the speed limit. And he was, yes, sir, and no, sir. And he said, well, I'm going to let you go this time, and that's all that happened. But I had fears of something getting a lot worse than what it actually did.
All the ingredients were there.
They were there. And I mean, the state line wasn't all we had going on. I mean, we busted steals and we enforced law. We went to the beer joints. You got to talk with law enforcement to know. People see cops in the daytime and they don't realize most of their job's done at night.
That's when the activity
That's
starts.
right.
That's when the evil comes out.
That's exactly right.
None everybody's evil, but gets in trouble with the law. Some of them just get stupid.
Well, all of us go to bed. We got to go to work tomorrow.
Yes.
But the stuff that don't go to bed stays up. They're up all night, and that's when the mischief occurs.
Was all these steals with all these bootleggers? Now, when you talk about bootleggers, are you calling the people that make the moonshine the bootleggers, or are you talking about the people that sell it to bootleggers?
No, let me talk about that a second.
Yeah.
I know y'all want me to hush, but
No, I want to hear about this.
so we had guys that sold unbonded whiskey. You know, I was talking about those 2 U-Haul trailers being backed up and they loaded. They'd buy case up on case up on case of unbonded whiskey. I'll tell you a story about that when I get done with this.
Let me ask you, was there in jugs or was it in mason jars?
Half pints of Old Charter.
Oh.
It's regular whiskey, and they were, they'd sell it out the back door for $2.50 a half pint. They were paying $1.65, and they're selling it $2.50. And we knew them all. We knew who was doing it. And the rule was, we're going to let you do that as long as you don't sell to a minor. And if we got called to a wreck and there was an underage kid involved in it and he'd been drinking, Buford wouldn't go to bed till the kid told him where he bought that whiskey. And when he found out who it was, here we go. And son, it was over. That boy was done. He didn't sell whiskey no more in McNairy County.
I've heard people talk. I don't mention any names, but you had that. Now that would be the guy selling the whiskey would be what you call a bootlegger.
Yeah.
I've heard of people that would do it here in Bogota, Tennessee. They would always say, "Hey, yeah." Some of the old timers say, "Yeah, you had to go by so and so's house." And
so I'm gonna tell you one of those stories I probably shouldn't tell.
oh,
When we'd catch them 2 U-Hauls backed up, but they'd be loaded from top to bottom. Oh, I need to tell you about the log truck too.
yeah, well, yeah.
But they'd be loaded with whiskey. Well, we'd always skim off a few cases, and I always kept it. And back in the old days, at politicking time, you'd go over and you'd stick half pint in your back pocket, and you go up and you knock on Tony's door, and you'd ask for a vote and shake hands and to ask his wife for a vote. And well, he'd follow you out to the car, and out there at the car, you'd pull that half pint out, and you'd hand it to Tony. And that's the way it was. That's the way we politicked back in those days. But another story, we had there's a lot of pulp orders in McNairy County. You got the paper mill over at Counts. And we all know what a log truck is. And a log truck is a truck that's got no fenders on it. It's been beat all to crap because it's always down in the woods. So Buford and I are sitting there, we see this, I'll never forget, it's a new bright red Dodge log truck. And it comes by the first time we know, say, man, somebody got him a new truck. Yeah. Two weeks later, we see that truck, and the truck's still just shiny and red. And 2 weeks later, we see that truck, the truck's still just shiny and red. 2 weeks later, that truck, Buford said, we need to do something. I said, that ain't right. So we stop him. And we're walking up there, and Buford's tapping on them logs, and they're logs, but they're making a funny sound. So we get the driver out, and these boys had built a box on the back of this truck, and they'd taken slabs and put them on the side down the top that looked like logs on there, and on the back, they'd cut logs on the door and they'd nailed them, the ends of them logs up there where it looked like it was in the logs, and you open that thing up, it's just full of whiskey.
Full of bottled whiskey.
Yeah. And if the guy had took the old truck out in the woods and banged her up some, we never would have caught him.
Now, those weren't the moonshiners.
He was carrying that whiskey to a moonshiner. He was a distributor.
He was. Well, where was any idea where all this untaxed whiskey was coming from? You don't have to mention, but I mean, just a general, like Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee.
I mean, it was coming out of Mississippi. I mean, it was, if you're a small town liquor store down there, and the guy says, look, I'll take 50 cases of Old Charter if you can get it, but I don't want to pay tax on it. Where it went from there, I don't know, but they'd get it. It didn't have that tax stamp on it.
And they weren't supposed to be selling it there in McNairy anyway, were they?
They weren't supposed to be selling it anywhere without a tax stamp on it.
So, did y'all ever bust in? You see, like on the Beverly Hillbillies, Granny had a steel for medicinal purposes only. That's what she said. Did y'all ever have anything like that? Were steels like that looked like her big copper pots and?
Yeah, I mean, a steel's a steel. I mean, we caught a bunch of them. I mean, it's every now and then. One time we had a rash of deaths down close to the state line, and it was people buying cheap moonshine. And what had happened is that mash takes so long to work, and you can't hurry it. You got to let it work. But there is a way to hurry it. I've seen dead coons in there where they'd throw a dead coon into the case. It makes it work. But the best thing to make it work quick is throw a car battery in there. So they take the tops off that car battery and they pitch it in that mash, and son, it just instantly goes to bubbling. I'm talking about it instantly works, and then you run your mash off. Well, when you sell that whiskey, people are dying from lead poisoning. But that was, I mean, you had moonshiners that were up here that run good, clean shines and sold good whiskey, and you had guys down here that sold rot gut. They were just in it for the money.
So the ones that sold the good, clean, I mean, they'd be selling it to, you see on like the Andy Griffith Show. I'm dating myself, the Andy Griffith Show. Otis always had a jar of clear whiskey. Is that what you're talking about, clear whiskey?
Yeah. We had a jug. When you went back into the jail, you went through a door that you locked, but then it was kind of like a hallway, and all the cells were there, and there was always a jug of moonshine that sat right up there in the corner. And I asked him, I said, what is that sitting here? He said, I'll show you one of these days, and that was all that was ever said about it. Well, about 3 months later, there's a guy that we all knew down there. He was an alcoholic, and we arrested him, and mainly to get him off the street, keep somebody running over him. He was so drunk. And I used to go up there and eat breakfast. We had a trustee that could make the best biscuits you ever ate, and I'd go up there and eat breakfast. Well, I'm up there eating breakfast because I'm going to go to work at my other job, and I hear them all back there hollering, raising Cain, and run back there, and this guy's gone into DTs. He's on the ground. Buford said, grab that jug. And he had him over here, and he just started pouring that whiskey all over him. Of course, a lot of it was going in his mouth in a few minutes. He just smoothed out. If you hadn't put that whiskey in him, he'd have died.
I've had law enforcement officers, they were older, of course, that would always say that, they would say, we always kept a jug of whiskey in the jail for that very purpose.
Yep.
You'd have, they were probably good people, but they had an addiction to alcohol, and they'd get, it'd be cold outside, and they'd arrest them, and then they'd give them a shot or so in the morning so they wouldn't go into.
There was an old man that had retired from the railroad down there, and he made whiskey, and he made his own barrels, little old, like 25-gallon barrels, and charred them. And he'd make that shine, and then he'd put it in those barrels, and he would bury those barrels for 2 years. And he had before they get the headstone up, those grave markers, those metals stick in and got something wrote on them. Well, he had those things marked, and he would dig one up, the barrels up every 2 years, or he'd dig them up every year, but it'd been in the ground for 2 years. And people would just kill for that whiskey, and he'd bring me and Buford a gallon of it. Now, I don't know whether you drink whiskey or not, but that's the best whiskey I ever put in my mouth.
I had a friend of mine. Anyway, I went up to East Tennessee. I'll tell you my history with moonshine. Anyway, it was he gave me a jar of. He said this was made by a guy over here, and I don't know if the guy texted or not. Don't make any difference. Well, I decided I was going to smell of it. That thing was clear, clear as water. And I had a mustache at the time, and when I smelt of it, my mustache hairs went down into the white liquor, and I just went like you do with your. That was all I needed right there. It lit me up.
Wally,
Sir.
Do you believe he didn't take a drink of that?
I did not. I did take a drink of it at one of them places in Gatlinburg's. I just don't. That's tough. I don't know how people drink that stuff.
It's. I guess it's acquired taste.
It had to have been.
But you know, you go buy bottled whiskey now. It's all white when it's made. What gives it the color is the barrel. When they char those barrels and they put that whiskey in there, that's what turns that whiskey brown. It was white when it was made.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot of things today. Well, I guess that's why I think there's a recipe, Tennessee sipping whiskey, and well, you know, they talk about char broiled or not char.
Well, they quick char. They call it quick char now, and the only reason I know about this, I saw it on that thing, Moonshiners, where they'll take charcoal and they'll take that moonshine and pour it through that charcoal, and it'll give it
It slowly drips through it.
gives it a color.
So people like that, you're talking about the old man with bearing the barrels and stuff. I mean, those, you know, they probably were.
Well, most of the shine you bought was white whiskey.
Well, they weren't giving you any trouble. They weren't giving you. Those people weren't giving you any trouble. Were
No, I mean the guy I'm talking about the old man that retired. He just made those 2 barrels full every year. The people who were giving us trouble were the rot gut guys that were selling that shine. I mean, you could buy a half pint of Old Charter was $2.50. You could buy a gallon of moonshine for $2.50. So you're getting, you know, a half pint versus a gallon for the same money. I mean, it was.
They didn't taste the same, did they?
No.
How long had it been illegal?
What?
I guess making the whiskey.
Moonshine?
Yeah.
You know, I don't really know that, but our country was built partially on moonshine.
Right.
You know, that's what the original 13 colonists brought it in here. I mean, the Appalachians, that's where moonshine, where whiskey got its start. And I mean, every little town had it was made their own whiskey.
Yeah. During Prohibition, it was illegal. Moonshine's illegal because it's not taxed, correct?
Right. That's the only
Because the
reason it's
government don't
illegal.
get any tax off of it.
That's all it's about, is the money.
But the selling of it, that's by the county.
Well, the counties used to be dry counties and wet counties. You know, like Dyer County probably was a dry county at one time.
I've always heard this, that Dyer County was what they call wide open. And Dyer County was a wet county, beer and whiskey, and that a lot of the counties around Dyer County didn't have liquor stores, and some of them still don't.
Yeah, there's still counties that are dry like that.
Yeah.
So y'all
O'Brien County.
Y'all two have been in our duck blind, and you see the sign hanging up in there about the hotel. You know the history of that?
No.
I don't, but I figured it had something to do with something illegal.
That was in Gibson County, and it was on the Forked Deer River, and they said it was during Prohibition that they'd drive from Memphis up here in those OA models, get on a paddle wheeler in Dyersburg, they'd ride up the river, and that hotel was on the property that our duck hole is. Mm-hmm. And they said it was an ornate, beautiful hotel, had a racetrack out there, but they sold whiskey and gambled and all that stuff. And if you go on the Gibson County Archives, there's one sentence in there that mentions, that hotel was there in Gibson County. But you got to remember what they were doing was illegal.
Yeah.
But it was, the old timers will come by every now and then, like, in the summer when we were doing something, they'd stop by and it was just interesting to hear it. And one of them was always going to take me out there and show me exactly where that hotel was, but he passed away before I ever got him to take me.
Yeah. They had a place like up here at Beavarn. O'Brien County comes in between Dyer and Lake, and the law wouldn't come that far over, so they had to join over in there.
Yeah.
It was illegal in places, and like they said, you got away with it. Some of them paid the sheriff. Some of them, they just had the rules they lived by.
Well, in what Wally said, that's the only difference was the tax. And that's, you always heard about the revenuer being after the moonshiner. That was because they weren't paying the tax on the whiskey. That's when the government got involved and started taxing whiskey. That's when moonshiners, why do they call them moonshiners?
Because it's at night.
They did it at the moonlight.
They did it when the moon shined.
They did it during the moonlight delivering that whiskey. And that's where the name moonshiners come from.
We know that song, Rocky Top. I know RT's a big fan of Rocky Top. It talks about the revenue. That's what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that was, and that's not, that was back in the 60s and in the early 70s that you're talking about. But that was still going on. Now, when did you move? That was still going on probably in the 70s and 80s. I can remember Daddy talking about.
You still got moonshiners.
Yeah. Yeah, you probably still do have moonshiner.
No, probably to it.
Yeah. I got hooked up.
Are you making a confession?
You run at night or something, RT?
No.
He just knows a guy.
I've got
Yeah.
family and stuff still out in Salt Lake City, and they just beg me for moonshine, and I know somebody that knows somebody that can come up with a quart of it, and it's a novelty to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they just, that's a big deal when I get them a quart of moonshine.
Kind of like Coors beer was
Yeah.
when you couldn't get it in Tennessee.
I remember that.
Yeah, they'd go across the river and get Coors beer.
They made a movie about it.
And all of them quit drinking it. You never see no cans on the side of the road after that.
Smoke in the back.
There's still some whiskeys like that.
Anytime my brother and them would come this way from out there, I'd tell them, be sure to bring me a case of Coors beer. And it, we don't even.
You don't even look at it anymore.
No.
Yeah, it was, I guess it's Smokey and the Bandit probably did a lot about that movie. Well, it was interesting. Things have changed a lot since that era of law enforcement, and that was interesting. I always wondered how Hollywood
Twisted it.
well, not only twisted it, but sniffed out a story of a sheriff in rural West Tennessee,
The book, the 12th of August.
and a song.
Yeah, the song started it, and then along comes W.R. Morris is the guy's name that wrote the book, and I don't even know where he came from, but he wrote the book, the 12th of August. He actually wrote another book after that about Buford. And Buford was still living when the book was written, and that's what Hollywood got a hold of.
Now, the 12th of August was when his wife got killed.
Yeah.
Any idea why that guy decided to write about that? Was he from McNary or?
I don't know where he was from. But the song, Eddie Bond was a popular figure in Memphis back in those days. He had a nightclub, him and Jackie Fargo.
Oh, Jack Fargo, the wrestler.
Well, they had a nightclub down there, and he had a lot of political collections and movie star connections, and that's what got the word going. And it just kind of went from there, and then that book came out, and as far as who actually called Hollywood and said, look, you need to come down to McNair County and take a look at this guy, I couldn't tell you. But I do remember very well Mort Briskin when he walked out of that hotel room.
The man in the red.
Red.
I bet you did. Was his hair red?
No, he was bald, except he had hair around here, and like I say, it was down past his shoulder. He was a nice enough guy, but he just didn't fit in McNair.
I was going to say, did he stick out in McNair, or did he blend?
A sore thumb.
RT, you got another good question? Because that other one was good.
Which one did I ask?
About the what made them?
Oh.
That was a very informative question.
Yeah, we've learned a lot about that. Well, did
How about
Tony's
RT?
got one. Tony's got. Go ahead, Tony.
If we-
Bubba?
Too much
I
dead
don't-
air.
I don't care. It's dead air. Ask it. Ask questions. The man's here.
Go ahead, Tony.
Well, no, I'm gonna just keep asking him questions till y'all come up with something, because I'm just filling in some details. I mean, I like the book. You know, that's interesting to me how they figured out. Some guy come and wrote it. Did Buford kind of collaborate with the guy on the book?
Yes, he did.
So he was the 12th of August. Well, you know what? I mean,
That first movie, everything that happened in that movie was something that had happened. Now, when Hollywood put their spin on it, it was totally different than the way it was. But I'm talking about, you know, they would ask us, tell us how this went down. We'd tell them, and then, like I say, they'd do the Hollywood spin on it.
They'd
But
give
the
him the
events
big
were
stick.
true.
We're gonna do that on this show, the Hollywood spin.
Yeah. What'd you say, Bubba?
The events actually happened. Just the way they portrayed them was different from the original.
That's true.
what did you think was the biggest exaggeration of the movie?
Had to be
The biggest,
stick.
the biggest spin.
Well, the stick was the biggest exaggeration. The black deputy was one, and the way they dressed Buford, those suits he wore were custom made. There was a men's store in Corinth, and he went down there every quarter and got 3 suits custom made, and that's what he wore every day. And I mean, I just can't emphasize enough about how meticulous he was about his dress and his appearance.
So he was, yeah. In the movie, he was. You never saw him in a suit, but every picture I think I've ever seen, he's. And I think suit wearing probably wasn't that uncommon.
If you go online somewhere, that black Pontiac that they burnt down, there's a picture of him standing on the bumper with his knee up on it, holding an M16. That's really a pretty cool picture. I've seen it. I've got a copy of it somewhere, but you know, that's another thing we hadn't talked about is guns. There was an enormous amount of guns. His house had burnt, and he had big lockers full of guns, and he drug those out of there before they burnt, and he called me to come get them, and I got them, and I had them at my house for 2 years. And every time I'd see him, I'd say, you need to get these guns. I'll get them one of these days. Well, he came and got them 2 weeks before he got killed.
Oh,
And one of those guns was Colt had come out. They were going to build a Buford Pusser Special 357 Magnum, and that prototype gun was in there, and it would be that gun would be worth. I don't even know where it's at now. I don't have any idea it's got. But people would send him. There was a guy that made him a shotgun one time, and it had a stock on it. Just I don't know what kind of wood it was. It was absolutely beautiful. But we had lots of guns, and we shot a lot. We would shoot 3 or 4 times a week. That's the reason. I mean, he was wicked with a handgun.
Did he hunt or do any outdoors?
Mm-mm.
Did you hunt back then?
Bird hunted.
Bird hunting.
You know, I grew up bird hunting.
Mm-hmm. Was there a lot of, I guess, the people y'all dealt with, were they heavily armed?
A lot of them were.
I mean, would they have you talked about the automatic weapons.
No, I mean handguns. They weren't shooting automatic weapons.
But it was a common occurrence for if you had to deal with someone that they may have, well, I guess in law enforcement, you always assume they're probably armed, right?
I did.
I kind of want to move on from Buford and kind of figure out how you ended up here from McNary, and I guess what you did after working there and all that. I mean, what's the story after?
Well, I came up here with my previous company. I came here actually from Florence, Alabama. I was in Florida. I'd gone back out west, and I was in Grand Junction, Colorado, working for Century Equipment Company. And I came back home, and I'd gone back to work for my old company, and I was moved up here with them. That's what got me to Dyersburg. And at the time, I thought, well, this is just another move, and, you know, I'll leave Dyersburg and go somewhere else. I just never dreamed it'd become home.
When did you leave law enforcement?
When Buford went out of office.
Okay.
You lived in Dyer County 50 years.
Almost.
I knew it
quite.
was close.
Yeah.
So you came here in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yes.
Because this, wait a minute. Time flies. Yeah, late 70s, early 80s. Heck, I'm 58 now. So,
Well, when we, like I say, when we came, I thought I'd just be making a move here and be here for a while. And I did, actually. I went to Memphis for a year. I was kind of, they'd call me to go in and straighten up a district that I worked for. And I came back, and then I was in Jackson for the last 9 years with that company, but I lived here. I drove back and forth every day.
Oh, that was before you started running Century here.
Yeah.
Well, I knew I didn't never see you. I mean, I knew Jason and knew of him, but I never seen you. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense why I never did at that time.
Yeah.
well, we're glad you're here. I mean,
Yeah.
we're glad not only are you here for this episode, but you moved to Dyer County. I think you and your family have added something to Dyer County. I really do.
I don't know about that, but it's
Well, maybe your wife,
it's
your
home.
wife, and
Yeah,
your son
there you
and
go.
daughter.
There you go. It's home. This is where I'll be planted, so I'm not going anywhere.
It's a good place.
It is a good place.
Well, I don't know. We're about to wrap up because before we wrap up, I'm going to ask him: is there anything he wants to tell? I mean, you got a story that people have been trying to ask you about for I guess 50, almost 60 years now. And is there anything you want to add just about that time and about that life, that part of your life, and about the the man that got you in law enforcement?
I mean, not really. All I'd say is don't always believe what you read on the internet and all these different. Buford was a good man. He was a good sheriff. He believed in enforcing the law, and that's what he did. I was proud to work for him.
Well, that's about as well of a statement you say about somebody and that you could.
No doubt.
Now, that for our listening world, this has come from the mouth of the man that worked with him during that period of time, Buford Pusser. So, and his story's been sought after.
You know, let me tell you one quick story, and then I'll hush.
No, don't hush, but tell us a quick
When
story.
Debbie and I got married, he was part of the wedding party. He wasn't he sat with the family. I don't know exactly what he wasn't up there with me, when I was getting married. What do you call them? Groomsmen.
Groomsman.
But we like we do now, you rent tuxes when you get married, and we went down to this place where Buford had those suits made, and that's where we rented our tuxes. Well, he wanted to wear a tux, and they didn't have a rental tux that would fit him, so he had to make him a tux. And he bought a tux that he wore to our wedding,
Wow.
And he was when it came to children and old people, he was as kind-hearted person as you'd ever meet. If you were breaking the law, he was the meanest SOB you'll ever know.
But he was fair, right?
Yep.
Well, that's all you can ask for in law enforcement, somebody being fair. RT, any questions?
I think I'm out.
You're out of questions? How about you, Wally?
I think I've learned a lot, and it's pretty awesome.
Yep.
Now he's a duck hunter, though.
Oh, no, he's a duck.
Those bird hunters went away. Now he's a duck
I
hunter.
am a duck hunter. Well, I still like bird hunting.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But, I mean, you duck hunt more than you bird hunt.
I appreciate Wally, y'all. Everybody here, Tony, I know, but Wally's been real good to my son, and I appreciate that. They've hunted with us, and I'm going to get to go hunting with them now. So it says, Wally, Jason, if you're watching this,
Yeah.
You
He's
get a
going.
Yeah. You get a hunt without Jason. One that he has to miss out
No, it's
on.
better with him.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to be together when he and I are.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like when me and Wally are in there. And
Yeah.
I've hunted with you and Jason before, and I thought, I remember the first time I hunted, you were there.
You know,
What?
go ahead.
First time I hunted with Jason, and you were there, and I remember it. I was standing next to Jason. You was over here. I'm not going to say what you were saying, but you did. I think you cooked the breakfast, and you was wanting to shoot at some ducks, and they came in and they left.
He called the shot late. Is that what you're saying?
No, he didn't call the shot.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah, but you were down there. You were saying something about it, and this is what happened. Jason turned to me. He said, "Do you think we could have got them ducks?" And I said, I said, "This, Jason." I said, "Jason, I don't know. I've never shot at a duck that close before." Of course, I brought that's when I shot a 10 gauge, and we were in that hole, and y'all were shooting them. I mean, I probably couldn't hit that duck. It was 5 yards from us, but it was beautiful. I mean, I enjoyed watching it. Of course, you were a little. You told him what you thought.
Well, I'm not down there to look at him.
You ain't got to worry about shot calling.
No, with me
Wally's
doing
there.
it. He asked me that, and I said, I'd tell him, well, we done shot at them time they got there. Don't worry about it.
But it was. I mean, I enjoyed watching them. That was something to say. But anyway, and I enjoyed hunting with y'all the first time and the second time.
Well, we all have a lot of fun in the duck blind.
We do.
You know, I'll be 77 my birthday. I don't know how many I got left, but till I can't go, I'll be going.
Well, actually, the good thing about our blind, you can go as old as you want to be because it's easy.
Yeah, and you woke up.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
You can go anytime you want to.
It's going to have to be easy for me to go.
It's going to be easy, believe me. Easiest it's going to be.
You know,
You're going to go.
You know, the blind, we got water in the new blind. You know
Yeah.
how tall it is. We got water in it.
Yeah. It is a big water.
Yep.
Let's wrap it up, RT. Have you got your poem? Is it a poem he reads or words of
No,
wisdom?
he does a quote.
A quote. Yeah. You
I
didn't
bet he
bring
forgot
I
it again.
guarantee if they're words of wisdom, he's reading them.
Wisdom.
one. Wisdom.
Here we go with pronunciating.
There's somebody from Mobile County talking about how somebody talks.
Oh, man. I don't have a quote.
You didn't bring one?
No, I didn't get a quote. I was gonna, or today, or the sermon this morning at church. He talked about when Jesus steals the water when Mark and them were out in the ocean, and I thought, you know, it kind of relates to here lately. We've had a lot of storms. We talk about the flood coming up. I was just gonna say in our prayer today, remember those that have been affected by the storms and are going to be affected by the flood, and some have already been affected, but there's just a lot going on in people's lives right now, and I think we need to, you know, remember that in today's prayer and remember that we have Jesus to cling to in those trying times. So,
RT, what did Jesus tell him in that boat?
you trying to put me on the spot now?
About their faith?
Yep. Their faith. That's what sunk them, their faith. Lack of it. That's why they started sinking.
He said,
They were doing good. They said, "Come to me." They right, and they was walking across there, and then their faith started wavering.
yep. He said, ye of little faith.
Just have faith. And what RT says is good. I mean,
it's
the
good.
rain and the stuff and the storms, but there'll be a better day tomorrow. Have faith in that.
Yeah.
Bubba, anything you want to add?
No, sir. I'm good. I just want to tell Mr. Maxey appreciate him coming and sharing with us.
I
I
appreciate that.
appreciate it.
Bubba's mostly here for his good looks and charm.
Well, he's a winner.
He's a winner, ain't no doubt about it. Well, since RT didn't have a quote, I'm going to give a quote since RT keeps forgetting it, because the only way to get RT to do something is to do something, and he's got to do his
I
own.
didn't forget it.
Oh, you did? You meant not to bring it?
I mean, that's what I was going to talk about.
Oh, dog. I was going to say my quote was, RT, when in doubt, do what Wally says. That's going to be my quote I use every time he don't do a quote.
But it's your idea.
But it's your idea.
RT, I wouldn't get that quote tattooed to my arm or anything.
RT, every time I do this, do you come back to get some more of it?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I could turn this on them and make them look really bad right now.
Do it.
But I'm not going to.
I mean, RT's a nice guy, but the only thing we have to let up because he's the only one that can work the board.
I mean,
Oh, we can't lose him.
No, we would just be sitting in here going like, unless some listener come up and stepped up, like
No.
all of our sponsors has, but we'd rather have RT.
No, there's nobody gonna put up with it. Now I'll just say this: everything now I'm gonna toot RT's horn. This whole backdrop, the wood, the table, the microphones, the lighting,
Moving this back here, I guess.
moving that back there. I know
He-
Wally didn't.
I can tell you this, he's
that's
smarter than I am.
That's well, he is. RT has some talents,
well, we have to have some structure.
And our youth
and I'm the
banquet.
structure.
When everybody shows up on time.
I was here on time.
Yeah, let
And
it
are
be
you-
noted.
Our youth banquet's second to none, and it's these two. Me and Tony did nothing. We're just the pretty faces that run the show.
Yeah.
We
No
don't really
comment.
run the show. We just sit here.
Tony runs the show.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, anyway, if we don't have any other, first I want to thank our guest, Maxi Don, for coming. He's gave it a very interesting, in-depth, he's shared some historical facts of one of the highest grossing movies of all time at that particular point in time, which I didn't know that. I'd always knew it was a success. A movie that Wally and I went, I remember standing, it's a kid in a line to go to the Martin Theater with Mama and Daddy to see that movie. So, but the movie wasn't just a regional movie; it was all over.
No, it was.
Yes, and we do appreciate that. Wally, anything else, Bubba? No, I just like to thank the listening world for listening to this. You can see this on the Spotify, Apple. Do we got Apple?
Yep.
Apple, whatever it is. Also, for anybody that's listening on one of those venues, you can also go to YouTube TV and see it in person. Wally, you want to close us out in a prayer?
Yep. Let us pray. Dear Lord, let us remember why on Sunday, while we're here in this world, is to try to make it to heaven. Let us always try to do the right thing. As RT said, let's bring up all the people that suffered through the storms and will suffer in the coming days. Help them to be strong. Help them to faith to grow in you and to worship you and to be blessed by you, because with you we do find peace.
Amen.
Lord, go with us, keep us strong, and let us keep the faith that try to drive this. Our faith is what brings us together to try to do the things we do now. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
This is the Amen. This is the Pagoda Boys. Until we can have an episode again, broadcasting from the No Limit Cafe in downtown Pagoda, Tennessee. We'll see you again.